Okay, we have another politically charged topic. After the next one, we're gonna switch with the vibe just a little bit, lighten up the mood,
Yeah.
lighten up the mood a little
Uh,
bit.
a,
Topic
a
number
palate
two.
cleanser, if you would.
Topic number two is very appropriate for the month of November. Now, while I and Reese have both shaved our mustaches in support of Movember, which is about men's health, particularly cancer, and awareness of the health concerns that men face, particularly prostate cancer, which is a serious
I need to
issue.
cut you off. I
Go
need to
ahead.
cut you off. I realize who you look like.
Who?
You look like a very light skinned George Yancey. On God, with the pencil stash.
I think the only person who's gonna laugh is gonna be Reese in the chat. He'll be the only one who gets it and will have himself a nice giggle.
You're a light skinned George Yancey.
Okay.
Sorry, I had to say that.
No, it's
live
fine.
on the internet.
Um,
Sorry, take us to the other fucking the other November holiday.
Reese has already started. Hoagie, don't get me started. I'm still mad at you for not committing. All right, this is a movement. Get it together.
Yeah,
I expect the
we
stash.
will definitely be reading Yancey.
You're gonna listen to Queen tomorrow. It's gonna be the vibe. A little Queen Devil Wears Prada hybrid is gonna be the playlist for tomorrow. In any event, Movember tends to be paired alongside what I'm sure you have heard of if you're familiar with any internet, which is the phenomenon of No Nut November. Now, the only reason that I thought that this warranted any conversation, yeah, see, Reese ran into Yancey at ASA. That makes sense. It was that Freddie Mercury dude. He really does. He really does. He has the look. The reason I bring up No Nut November is because as a gender sexuality scholar, it is the weirdest phenomenon to me. I don't fully understand it. I never have. Never. And this year is probably the only year where I've been seeing people clamoring to say we don't have to do it. Let's take a year off. 2020 has already been hard enough. Like, please, you know, we need all of the sexuality that we could possibly get our hands on to survive this. And that's a very different take from the norm. My understanding of it, at least, you know, putting on my social cap, is that it basically arose from a deep-seated sort of internalized that
Where's Freud when you need him?
I can't. Oh man. Oh man. If that's not the biggest kappa I've ever seen. Holy crap. Oh god. The lies are not there.
I love chat so fucking much.
Not a single lie detected. And so it was initially geared towards men, right? Like that was the whole point. It was like men were like, "Yo, keep yourselves in check." Right? Like
Wow.
you need to show some self-restraint, some willpower, some control, right? And it's going to make you feel 10 times better and have more sexual vim and vigor in December, right? Like this it was like marketed as this powerful movement. Correct me if I'm wrong, but it really just, to me, sounds like an excuse to police the sexuality of other men in the same way that we police the sexuality of women for eons. To be like, my mans, keep yourself in check. You need to slow your roll and take one for everybody else. It feels so heavily like, oh god, I don't even know like misogynistic is the right word for it. It feels worse than that. There's something deeper and more insidious in it.
Dude, I think it's just super homoerotic. I think that all of No Nut is super homoerotic.
You're definitely right.
And I say that as someone who works in residence life, right? Where like I've had years where kids make brackets and there's like an honor code.
Yep, I've seen that as well.
You know, and it becomes this thing where like people are like grumbling to each other about how swollen their balls are. Like it just becomes this odd homosocial erotic libidinal ritual whose goals I don't really get.
You don't fully comprehend. Yeah, me neither.
I don't really, because what's interesting is like no one cares about who wins the bracket, right? No one cares about like the ascetic who doesn't touch himself at all and makes it through November. You know, I don't even know what you would call that. Like I I don't know what the accomplishment is, right? The laughs and the giggles are about like the folks who are like I'm out 3 days in or whatever, and then there's of course its compatriot holiday, Destroy Dick December, which I actually literally only learned about a not a few days ago, like last year. I was like, wow, that's a thing. So you like,
Or
what
you
are we
didn't
doing?
know that
Saving it up?
it had like a secondary component to it.
It's a diametric analog, I suppose.
Oh, you God, I really wish you watched Letterkenny because they do a really fantastic bit about it where it's like they do a whole joke about how if it's No Nut December, then or No Nut November, then it's Beat Your Dick December. And then the challenge isn't just that like there's a that you do it, it's that you do it per the number of the day. So theoretically, on Christmas, right, you're mixing 25 batches of man milk, right?
Hold up. Wait a minute. Wait a minute. There's shit that you can say on the internet, and then there's that. Oh my fucking.
That was almost a direct quote from the show. So there is no real point other than I think something that was alluded to earlier, right? That there is a policing of women that happens during this. And honestly, this is probably the most explicit time that women get policed. It happens all year without question, but this is the 1 month where like there's apparently a social free pass to, as was astutely pointed out, right? To point at women and say, can you please not under any circumstances tempt anyone with anything? Can you just not be yourself? Because everything about you as female is sexual for the next 30 days. Can you just put it on pause? Right?
Yeah.
It's like free reign for the policing of bodies. To say like, you got to do everything you can in your power to make sure I can do everything in my power to not be a ferocious beast.
Yep.
With no self-control or willpower. To not be a decent human being.
And
there is no goal,
like
so it's like,
excuse,
is it
right? Like,
is it just the titillation of being like, let me just to say like, is the like, because the joy can't come from the resistance. There's no way, right? Sexual suppression is just like the underlying mantra of all of American society. All we want to do is sex shame everybody and make sure that everyone falls under this like same like Protestant notion that like sex is bad. Also the fact there are entire months talking about male masturbation, but women can legit never mention. But real talk. Listen, when I talk about sexuality in my classes with my intro students, when I introduce the topic of sexuality, I make a point that there are Canadian colleges that upon admissions, right, like the first day of school or whatever, when everybody moves on move-in day or whatever, and they have their little convention for the freshmen, there are a number of Canadian institutions that have been caught in some hot water for giving welcome packages to their students, and the female students get vibrators in their packages, and parents are like, nope, not my kid, how dare you? And the college is like, listen, far be it from us to promote safe sex with herself, then have her feel like she has to subject herself to danger. Which to me makes perfect fucking sense. It seems like a no-brainer. But we have this apprehension to female sexuality forever ad nauseum. But we're like, let's take a whole month to talk about the restriction of men's sexuality as some flavor of accomplishment that warrants a pat on the back. And also then sexual subjugation afterwards, right? It's like, you've done a good job, now let me make myself available to you. As if like you did anything special.
Yeah. This question of like, there being no holidays about women's pleasure, or just like non-cis het boys' pleasure, I think in part speaks to like this like sophomoric, boyish like style of masculinity that like is so venerated and valued in pop culture, right? And like it gets a pass, right? Like men are allowed to be children till well into their 30s, and it's just like what being
Totally
a man
okay.
is in this society. I think the other piece too is that like men have like a deep-seated and yet unarticulated anxiety about their ability as lovers.
Oh, for sure.
And I'll never forget this. So I did freshman orientation at Dickinson my last 2 years, and I helped do the component on like sexual health and gender violence. And we showed this clip that like was meant to be this like funny primer to talking about consent. And in it, right, there's like the jockey frat guy and the like cute like sorority girl, like very like archetypal of American college, and they're clearly about to get it in, and it's like, did you bring protection? And they're like, of course. And then 2 lawyers pop up who are like, they've got like paperwork to negotiate consent.
Yeah.
And it's super funny, and interestingly enough, like the young woman's got a male lawyer and the young man's got a woman lawyer, and the guy's lawyer goes, my client wants at least 5 minutes of Article 3. And the girl's lawyer is like, well, sure, but my client fully expects 5 minutes of Article 4 in return. And they're like, and we split them up by sex, so the male students and female students were split. And so there's like a chorus of like boyish sophomoric laughter as they watch this, and then the guy's lawyer rebuts, well, my client just doesn't do that. And then her lawyer rebuts, well, my client insists on at least 5 minutes of Article 4. If your client insists on 5 minutes of Article 5, she's got to get something out of this. And at that point, there is just this like incredible silence. The humor had disappeared. They no longer found it funny. Now, obviously, nobody like, yeah, Ben, right. There were so many loopholes that I see now in both the programming and the splitting of the students. Like you could have heard a pin drop in that room, and I think it speaks to the fact that like the idea that sex isn't just like penis inserting into an orifice fast and hard, and the act ends when the penis person finishes, and that the penis person is in no way accountable or responsible for the pleasure of somebody else. Like the questions that get introduced by this whole thing of Article 4, I think that they were just like palpable in the room, and all of a sudden these things come to the fore, and it stops being funny. No, you're not having trouble hearing anything, Siri, because no one's talking right now. And so there's like a cacophony of things that like, and there's just like an enormous anxiety for some of these boys.
You know what's interesting is just the other day, it's funny. Oh man. Again, y'all ain't wrong.
So much joy.
Y'all ain't wrong. What was interesting is my spouse was alerting me to a concern raised by Connecticut college students. They called a meeting because they're like, excuse me, we need this institution to help us address how we're going to have sex during COVID. You have all these restrictions on our dorms and all these restrictions on who we can and can't see, and we're very concerned for our sexual lives. And it came right before November started. I think like 2 days ago. So in my mind, I'm like, interesting. These students are now concerned for their sexual livelihoods during a pandemic, which already, adds a lot of interesting modifiers to how safe that is, right? Never mind.
A fucking raid, mom, man.
Dude, oh my god, it's fucking this. Never mind. I was gonna say all the dirtiest modifiers from Destiny that I could think of, like chaff, and then I was like, never mind. Why is Destiny the perfect?
This stream has taken several left turns.
This is exactly what the people want.
We have man milk. We have ill straight sex. Ill.
Just you gotta watch Letterkenny. I'm telling you, it's the jokes are there. But it was interesting to hear students raise this concern over like their sexual livelihoods in a time where like the greater societal argument is like, this is the time to abstain from all sex. And these students are like, counterpoint, we want to be able to have it, please and thank you, without all these restrictions. And I couldn't weigh the odds immediately on thinking about it, but it made me wonder, right? Because with the video that you talked about, that you were kind of helping to curate the sexual orientation of a collegiate population, if you will. I feel like this is exactly the age group that feels this the most saliently, right? That feels the pressures of like having an active sex life, but also buys into these fads of like homoeroticism and sexual repression and policing of sexuality and like questions of who has agency over sexuality, right? Like they're so at odds with each other that I'm trying to figure out who's carrying the torch for this. Like, how has this lasted so long, I guess, is the real question.
And what's the investment? Like, why participate? Why participate?
Yeah, because it's not like it has any real connections to Movember in like Movember's promotion of men's health, right? Like, in fact, if you were to ask your doctor would tell you that if you don't masturbate at least regularly, if you're not having a consistent sex life, that your prostate will suffer and you will get cancer. Like that's just what they tell you. They're like, don't fuck up your own body. Like,
this is about health,
and this is about health, and I mean, but patriarchy seems like the right answer, but it falls flat, right? Because they're not getting anything really out of it, aside from what I can see is like the 1 month free pass to objectify women more publicly without rebuke, because there's a socially accepted imagination about No November. Like there's no benefit to it. So unless it's like this is the one time a year where they get to re-up on that practice to make sure no one forgets that this is how we should conduct ourselves, I don't understand the prize.
And this is dawning on me now. I'm wondering if part of it is that No Nut November, right? The assumption of like this ascetic approach to your sexuality is tied to the conception of like cishet sexuality as something that's like unbridled, uncontrollable, unrepressible,
unsatisfying,
visceral, animalistic, right? That like has this like urgency and drive for like satisfaction. That what No Nut betrays is not like an investment in asceticism, but actually an investment in that conceptualization of cishet sexuality, that it's unrepressed, that it's in your face, that it's like, I mean, right? We literally have like phrasing for it, right? BDE and shit like that totally alludes to this mode of sexual expression that then No Nut invariably reifies in the very moment that it claims to put a clamp on it, because we only clamp it on No Nut. We don't unsatisfying. We don't. I love chat. Chat is turned up today. That we otherwise don't don't police, right? And maybe Destroy Dick becomes the exact opposite, right? It's this like libidinal overindulgence, excused precisely by this like ascetic repression. Like now I'm not going to use it. I'm not going to say it again. But you did that. You did that, Herbert. Um, you know, and both are meant to give latitude to what is ultimately like a homosocial, if homophobic, misogynistic, and most certainly like patriarchal approach to sexuality.
I
Mayhaps.
could see that. I could see that. I think there's definitely some logic there. It still baffles me though, because I guess the payoff still like confuses me, even if it's saying like that there's an acquiescence to its unbridled nature by simply saying we're going to take 1 month off from this behavior. But to then cap it off with a month of freedom of expression, if you will, right? But it's not meant for like a participant experience. It's meant for just the individual person, and again, in most cases, just the individual man. So like,
but that's where I disagree. I think that No Nut is always homoerotic. That No Nut is only No Nut in the cohort of other cis het guys.
Despite the fact that they have made claims to open it up to anyone and everyone who wants to participate.
We all know that's bullshit.
I mean, I agree. I also think it's bullshit, but